Good evening, everyone. Even though the clock on the wall says it's 7 minutes to 6, it is actually 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask all trustees to please log into the Creston. I will take the roll call this evening. Trustee Gray.
Here, thank you.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Good evening.
Trustee Zhang.
Good evening.
Trustee Amos.
Hello, everyone.
Trustee Baxter.
Good evening.
Trustee Rocha.
Hello.
Vice Chair Oliver.
Good evening.
Trustee Ahmed.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, everyone.
Thank you. And not present so far is Trustee Bryden and Trustee Daniele. I do expect them to join later. First order of business is approval of the agenda as revised. Oh, I'm sorry. First, we have the acknowledgement of traditional lands. I'm getting ahead of myself. Trustee Baxter, would you please give the acknowledgement?
Yes, thank you. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Ottawattaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much, Carol. Now we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Trustee Gray, would you like to move for approval?
Yes, I would.
Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Do we have any declarations of possible conflict of interest for this evening? Seeing none, we'll go on to approval of the minutes. Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I certainly would.
Thank you. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. This evening, we have one delegation, and before the delegate comes forward, I just want to remind everyone in the audience that this is a public meeting and that all of our meetings are live streamed and video voice recorded. And as such, we do ask that you remain as quiet as possible so that the microphones can pick up what the delegate is saying. And if there is a point in this evening's meeting that there's an opportunity for applause, I will signal that it's okay for that. Okay, thank you very much. And now we will welcome Elizabeth Galvin to come and delegate regarding the equity and inclusive education policy. Please come and take a seat, Elizabeth. Just to give you a little bit of orientation there, the button at the bottom will turn on this red light, and that means your mic is hot. So, and I want to remind you too that we do not discuss any administrative procedures at these meetings, so that we will be exclusively discussing policy.
Yes, everything I've written is talking about the policy.
Thank you.
As I stuck within the rules as best I could.
Okay, that's perfect. So you have 5 minutes for your delegation, and then there will be up to 10 minutes for trustees to ask questions of clarification.
Okay.
Okay, you may go.
Good evening, trustees, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about the equity and inclusive education policy under your direction. This important policy informs several administrative procedures, including the gender identity and gender expression AP that is being shared tonight. As the executive director of a nonprofit that deals with youth post-pandemic, I know that bureaucratic offices that operate using any of the terms diversity, equity, or inclusion are facing intense scrutiny right now. The workplace harassment of Richard Bilsko during DEI trainings and his subsequent suicide, the anti-Semitism inherent in DEI work exposed at the U.S. congressional hearing for Harvard University are but two recent examples of many. A meta-analysis released last week by Wilfrid Laurier professor David Haskell cited numerous studies proving that diversity, equity, and inclusion instruction lead to greater prejudice and even harm. Specifically, programs rooted in identity-driven critical theory like critical race theory, queer theory, or critical post-colonial theory, all of which you practice here at the HDSB, have been shown to sow division, resentment, and create instability. Teaching the intersectional neo-Marxist oppressor-oppressed worldview as a means to create positive behavioral change is not supported by empirical evidence. Your equity and inclusion policy specifically directs administrators to promote a positive school climate. Given what we now know about initiatives marketed as DEI, this warrants a review of any and all practices, policies, or APs that fail to meet that objective. In addition, your equity and inclusion policy appears to be generating APs with elements that directly contradict your own stated policy. Firstly, the policy repeatedly specifies that schools and families are partners in education and that the HDSB is committed to maintaining collaborative relationships with parents and guardians. This is inclusion. My concern is APs that specifically endorse the exclusion of parents for children of any age by limiting the information that they may have about their own child. This is a violation of your own policy. Second, the policy uses the word gender to describe the distinction in the human species between male and female, a material category at the foundation of human sexual reproduction and procreation. Here, the word gender is used as a synonym for biological sex. My concern is when this word passes through to the AP level, the words gender and sex are then separated and treated as distinct entities. Biological, sex-based identities are then actively discriminated against as it pertains to the use of private spaces and sports teams. This has serious consequences to the physical and mental well-being of many students, and again, is a violation of your own policy. Sex is a protected ground in the Ontario Human Rights Code and has existed as a protected ground for decades. As such, it should be referenced and addressed in all of your policies and administrative procedures. When can we expect to see an administrative procedure articulating the needs and rights of biological sex identities and expression in schools? Third, the policy clearly affirms every individual's right to follow or not to follow religious and/or creed beliefs and practices. My concern is any AP that compels adherence to a particular set of beliefs which may or may not be held by a given individual. This potentially violates not only your policy, but the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms referenced in the document. Lastly, the policy notes the link between equity and inclusion and the mental health and well-being of students. This is a serious matter and one that should be held in the highest regard and treated with the utmost care. Therefore, an AP must not prioritize the needs of one protected category at the complete and utter expense of another protected category. We already know that this is leading to harms for girls and women. What criteria and safeguards are in place to validate when and how we should prioritize one protected category over another based on empirical evidence in the school environment? Trustees, when your equity and inclusion policy is used to generate administrative procedures by unelected DEI proponents that contradict the aims and prescribed goals of said policy, then you have an obligation to insist that they be scrutinized, amended, and/or removed. Key stakeholders, namely parents, want to feel confident that the HDSB operational practices accurately reflect and align with the policy intention and guidelines that trustees are charged with monitoring. Trustees, please do that work. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much for your delegation this evening. Are there any questions for our delegate? Yeah, just a second. There it is. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. I wonder if a transcript of your presentation has been made available to the board?
I will. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy document as well? So you can see all of the studies and research papers that have appeared in the academic journals?
At this point, you're allowed to answer questions,
Oh.
but not ask additional questions.
okay.
I'm sorry.
I would be-
But I would be happy for you to forward any information that you have
Sure.
along with your delegation. I see no other, Trustee Rocha.
Yes, thank you for your delegation. My question is to the director and perhaps anyone on the senior administrative team.
I'm sorry, we don't make questions to staff during delegation time. Those questions come during the debate of the actual item, as per our procedure.
I will ask later.
Are there any other questions of the delegate? Seeing none, we thank you very much for presenting this information this evening.
Thank you.
And as it happens, the first item on the discussion items portion of our agenda is the Gender Identity and Gender Expression in Schools AP, and I'd like to ask Superintendent Petco to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair Collard. Through you, Chair Collard. As you know, our Gender Identity and Gender Expression in Schools AP is up for review. As you know, I did share the marked up as well as the final AP. I'd like to share a few notes and comments before taking questions. The first is that I'd like to reassure everyone, all trustees, that the gender identity and gender expression is a protected ground under the Ontario Human Rights Code. And this administrative procedure is absolutely in alignment with the Ontario Human Rights Code as well as the Ontario Ministry of Education. The Halton District School Board has consulted with the Ministry of Education on this AP to confirm that we are in alignment with the ministry. The Halton District School Board recognizes the rights of students, staff, parents, guardians, caregivers, and community members to equitable treatment without discrimination based upon gender identity and gender expression. And as per ministry directives, we understand that every student needs a safe, respectful, and inclusive environment in order to succeed. The procedures outlined in this revised document support student well-being and achievement by establishing and protecting accessible and inclusive experiences related to gender identity and gender expression. The AP has a few edits, and of note, one of the main concerns that we have heard from feedback is around parent consultation. So I'm going to address that head on. We want to reassure you that we recognize that specific accommodation requests will be addressed on a case-by-case basis and individualized to best meet the needs of a student. Recognizing needs will change over time and may be different throughout various contexts. In the majority of cases, noting that student safety and well-being is our highest priority, parents will be consulted. It is in very rare circumstances where a student's safety is at risk that in that moment or in that situation, consultation may have to be withheld at that time. I also want to make note that we have added to our AP one paragraph, and that is that the majority of accommodation requests are in consultation with students and their parents, caregivers, and guardians. With student safety and well-being as our highest priority, schools must ensure that accommodation requests and decision-making prioritizes the student. In terms of other edits to the AP, I would like to note that we've removed the definitions at the end of the AP, and the reason being is that definitions and our understandings of terms may evolve and has evolved. And given the AP review cycle, oftentimes, because it sits in an AP, it's often difficult to revise and edit in a timely way. So we will be providing a document that staff may refer to if there are questions about definitions. And then outside of that, we've made some cosmetic changes to ensure clarity of understanding and ensure that that the AP is efficient and also is not redundant in terms of crossing over to language or operational ideas or procedures that are in other APs. I think that is all for now. I welcome questions.
First, I would like to go to Trustee Rocha because she had a question for staff that wasn't asked yet. So go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair, the question I did have this evening is if the director or if any of our senior team members wanted to address any of the concerns that our delegate presented this evening on how our APs reflect our policy.
You would have to be more specific than that.
So, for example, our delegator talked about our equity and inclusion. I can't remember the entire name of the policy now, about the policy and how that then translates to different procedures, namely tonight's AP. So really, it's in response to the questions she presented us this evening, which I don't have a copy of her delegation. So off the top of my head, I don't remember all of the questions.
I don't remember all the questions either, but suffice it to say, the Ontario Human Rights Code clearly codifies gender expression and gender identity among other protected grounds. I don't believe I heard that in the delegates' presentation tonight. As a board, we have committed ourselves through our multi-year plan to equity and inclusion. We also have, as a board, a commitment to human rights. And so, following that, the Ministry of Education, as Superintendent Petco has pointed out, has made it clear that every student within the province of Ontario needs to have a place of safety and inclusion, and that they're supported. That includes members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. And so all students need to have that sense of safety and support and security within our board. And so that is what our AP seeks to address, to provide the safety nets that will support our students, those who seek to identify differently. And so, as was stated, and one of the main concerns that I know some parents have is the issue of parental consent. As stated, in the vast majority of cases, parents are the ones who bring these concerns to us. Parents are the ones who let the schools know that they are working with their own child to support them through transition, through different identities. And it's that communication channel that establishes a two-way between the school and the home that is prevalent in majority of cases. As was stated, in very few cases, and these are the exceptions and the anomalies, where the safety of a student, as expressed by the student, that their safety and well-being, and indeed perhaps their life, is at stake, that the board has a duty to protect the student and prioritizes the student. But that is not the norm. The norm, of course, is parents are involved in a conversation and in communication and in consultation with the school and the board to support the students. And so that is the effect of what we're trying to achieve. And so I don't know if there are any further specific questions, but I think that broadly speaks to our positionality.
You have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Margot?
Thanks, Amy. Through you to Jenny, or through you to the director to Jenny. So the trustees have received numerous form emails over the course of today. And I think it's really important. It brings up numerous concerns that I'm assuming much of the public, particularly the people that are here in the gallery tonight, have regarding this AP as well as policy that broadly influences the AP. So I'd really like to ensure that we're able to address these concerns. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to review some of the key criticisms and sort of get your response on it, because I see sort of two key areas in what they were looking at. One being the communication that they've had with the board, and then the second being the safety and well-being of our students. So, Jenny, first off, the public are concerned that there has been a lack of transparency. The board has employed a dismissive approach, and they have been met with silence, indifference, and redirection. Can you let us know, and I know there's been countless phone calls, countless emails, so if you can kind of elaborate on how you have communicated. And then I have one more.
Thank you. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Thank you, Trustee Shuttleworth. Sorry, Margot. Thank you. Through you, Chair Collard. So I'm going to respond to those questions by first stating a fact. It is a fact that the Halton District School Board absolutely values the input, feedback of all stakeholders, including parents, guardians, and caregivers. That is a fact. When a question around transparency is asked, I think we also have to think about what transparency looks like to different people. And so the degree of transparency may not be satisfactory to a certain individual or certain groups. And that is unfortunate, but I can't answer to that. But what I will say is that when an administrative procedure is up for review or creation, we absolutely have consulted with community groups, multiple voices, multiple stakeholder groups, and as well as those who actually have identity, who actually have lived experiences, knowledge, wisdom around the topic or the AP under consideration. All input is carefully reviewed. Every single call, email is carefully reviewed, or any other way of communication that has come to a department that is reviewing an AP, whether it's also through the senior team members, the director, associate director, trustees, all carefully reviewed. But what I would like to end with in answering this is, upon review of input, feedback, our job, my job as the Superintendent of Equity, Human Rights, and Inclusive Education is to ensure that any edits and changes made align directly with the Human Rights Code and also ministry directives around genuine inclusion, genuine affirming of identity, and also to ensure that it aligns with our multi-year plan, which says that every identity must be affirmed in our school spaces, not at the expense of anyone else or other identities, but all identities must be affirmed, celebrated, centered, reflected in curriculum or in spaces in our schools. I hope that answers your question.
So that's only part one.
Okay, part two.
So the second piece, as I said, was the safety and education of their child. And I know Director Curtis talked about that by and large, most of these cases are coming from families asking to have that conversation with the parents and the child and the teacher. but they also speak to the absence of a clear protocol. So if you can clarify the protocol, I think that might be in place.
Sure. And may I ask, Margot, just in terms of, you mean protocol to gathering input?
So, yes, you're correct.
Right.
So furthermore, the absence of a clear, you're right, thank you,
Okay.
for collecting feedback from parents and the public.
Right. Okay. So
I had misread that.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to start again by saying that the Halton District School Board absolutely values the input, feedback, and participation of all of our stakeholders. When you ask if there's a set protocol, if there is a member from the public who sees that a protocol is or an AP is coming up, absolutely they can reach out to trustees with any concerns. And we know that in this room, all of our trustees are very much focused on ensuring that they're hearing their constituents and listening to their feedback, regardless of what the topic is. If there is a particular concern around your child as related to their feeling of comfort or feeling of belonging or feeling of being affirmed in their spaces at school, we have a problem-solving protocol pathway, which is you go to your child's teacher. If it's classroom-based, if that you are not satisfied, you go to your administrator, vice principal, or principal of the school. If it is not resolved there, then you may contact the superintendent of the school. And if you're not satisfied there with a response or resolution, then you may go to the associate director, and then still you may end up with the director if you feel like your concerns are not heard. That is the protocol for any concern that a parent might have around their child. And let me reassure you that at every step of that process, there isn't a single individual who won't be open, willing, and wanting to find a resolution to ensure that your child feels safe, feels welcomed, and has success at school. I hope that answers the question.
That does, thank you. And I think it's just really, because again, as I said, I know we've all received these letters, and I think it's really important that we make sure that we are addressing those concerns. So I really do appreciate those answers. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Shinyi.
Thank you. As the AP states, the purpose of the AP is to establish and maintain a safe, inclusive, and welcome learning and working environment for HDSB community. So the LGBTQ students are part of our HDSB community, so they deserve the equal protection from harassment and discrimination. So we must protect them. This is our responsibility. But when I read this AP, I have some concern about how the AP served the goal. So I summarized my concern and my observation into 8 questions. The question 1, the AP section 1 define the gender identity as private and the confidential information. And in section 2, require others to use the student's chosen gender related pronouns. That means the gender identity is public, no longer private. How can be the same personal information be confidential and be public at the same time? Question 2.
We go one at a time.
I'll take that one. Question number 1. So in terms of bringing some clarity to this question about privacy and then publicly, giving the information out publicly, how can these two things coexist? So every student has a right to privacy and confidentiality. And that includes, if they choose how they want to be addressed, if they choose to keep that private, that's totally, the onus is on them, right? They own that information, and they can, as a broad, general, way of operating, boards operate under privacy and confidentiality for students and student information. So that's firmly established. If a student chooses, however, If a student chooses to express that they would like to be addressed by a certain pronoun or in a certain way, they have chosen to make it public. And so we acknowledge that, and then we then in turn will, respond in like manner. So that's the difference.
Okay,
Go ahead
so,
with your next question.
okay, my question number 2. So in section 1.1.8, students need to issue the consent before the school can disclose the student's gender identity to students' parents, which means when the parents need to submit a permission form for their children for future. At the same time, the children can sign the consent form for their parents to access their information. So what is a legal basis for that authorize the school board to hide students' personal information and activities in the school from access by the parents?
Trustee Zhang, thanks for the question. I'm wondering if you could clarify for me, expand a little bit more on that. I am a little bit confused around what exactly you're asking, because, and the reason why I'm saying this is because we do not ask for students to, nor parents to identify their gender identity on permission forms. So can you clarify
Right.
what it is you're actually asking?
It is not, the AP doesn't say consent form, but it says the student must have the consent. Then the school can disclose the gender identity information with the parents. That means the students must have the consent first. So, because the students, they are not the adult, can they make all their decisions? And in according to PPM 162, parents are primary educator. The school board, we are the service provider, and the students are our clients. How can the school board hide our clients' information to their parents?
So may I, Superintendent Pecco, thanks for the question, Trustee Zhang. So the notion that we are hiding information from parents is not accurate. As I stated in my earlier remarks, we work in collaboration with parents. And as I said, most cases, vast majority, it is the parent who brings to our attention that they need to have a conversation about how their child needs to be supported, how they need to be addressed, what's their pronoun, how they identify. Vast majority of cases. The exception that I cited was that if we believe through conversation with a student that they are in danger of their safety and their well-being, then we do reserve the right to prioritize the safety and well-being of the student. That's the exception. So we're not in the business of hiding information from parents. We're in the business of working collaboratively with parents, and with the rare exception, rare, I pronounce that and underscore, then we seek to prioritize the student safety and well-being.
Okay, so now I just ask the questions for clarification, not the debate. And my question 3 is, in section 2, refusal to acknowledge the student's gender identity and their chosen name will be considered discrimination. But that means we exclude the legal name. The legal name explain it by itself, it's illegal. So if we use the legal name, considered this is a discrimination, so this is unlawful.
Thank you, Trustee Zhang. So according to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the law recognizes that everyone has the right to self-identify their gender and that misgendering is a form of discrimination. Refusing to refer to a person by their chosen name and or pronoun or purposely misgendering, and I put this in quotes, will likely be discrimination when it takes place in a social area covered by the code, including services like education. That's from the OHRC.
Okay, my question.
Shinyi, you've used your 3 minutes. If you would like to ask more questions, please go back on the list.
Okay.
Carol?
Thank you. I guess just like to start by saying that this AP is important, and I think it's, I understand its legality, But we have this AP because this adheres to the philosophy of our board, right? That we support all students, and the social transition of a student needs to be supported in school, and that schools play a big role in that social transition, and that's important. So of course we have to adhere to the law, but I think we're also, we have certain values as a board, and this adheres to that. As Director Ennis pointed out, sometimes for the safety of students, information is withheld. So, in the rare instances, the safety of a student is at stake, and the board has a duty to protect students. There's no obligation there's no mention of that obligation and the procedure around it in this AP. And I'm wondering if there's information and if this could be bulked up a little bit to answer some of the concerns that we're hearing from the community. I think there is, as we're all aware, unease, giving the impression that schools will keep secrets from parents. But there's no assurance, and it's not addressed in this AP, that there is a legal obligation to report on behalf of students by almost everyone who's in our schools. And that's not addressed here. So I think what's happening is when you read the AP as written, without adding any more information, it's not clear that if a student is expressing a fear of safety, as Director Ennis alluded to, that there are procedures in place whereby that student will be supported. Because ideally, the social transition is supported both at school and home. We have our students for 6.5 hours a day. There's a lot of time that they're at home. So I'm wondering if there's a way to include in this AP that there is an involvement, there is a procedure that staff in the schools understand of how to involve other professionals who are trained to support students. So acknowledging that the student who's undergoing a social transition may not have that support at home, but they will get trained support at school. The way the AP is written, it makes it sound like it could be a single teacher with no mental health training supporting a student on their own. And I think that creates unease. And so, the bones of the AP are good and the philosophy is sound, but I think that there's a lot of information missing that we could add. And I know that other boards have guidelines and guidance for staff of how to help students navigate this process of social transition. So that's just kind of a statement and a question at the same time, if staff are open to adding more to this AP to provide that assurance. And I'm also just wondering if there's been any formal monitoring of the implementation. So this AP was created new in 2021. So it's been in action in the schools, and I'm wondering if you've been formally monitoring, how it's been working out on the ground in the schools. I guess that would be, through Chair Collard to Superintendent Pecco. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Collard, to Trustee Baxter, thank you for the question or comments. In terms of your suggestions, that they will be noted and taken into consideration, so thank you so much. In terms of your question around monitoring of the AP, short answer, not formally, no, but certainly through our department, through our Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Department, we support schools in implementing this AP administrators. So we have qualitative, feedback data around how it's working. It is working. It has been. And in practice, what you see in that procedure works for students because, again, we are aligned with the Human Rights Code, with ministry directives. We are confident, 100% confident, that this is keeping our students from our 2S and LGBTQ plus community safe and affirming identities in our spaces and ensuring that they are participating fully in our schools. So thank you.
And our next speaker is Tanya. Then we have Shinyi and Margot, and then we
Point of order, you've got
one out of time.
You've got Trustee
I'm sorry, I didn't
on the
see.
list, and he's a first-time speaker.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm also a first-time speaker, Chair.
Okay. I think we're just going to get first-time speakers in then because we have exhausted our time for this item. So we will go to Donna and then Naveed.
No, I was simply a point of order that Trustee Ahmad had been waiting and was a first-time speaker.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Naveed.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question through you, Chair, to Director Ennis and Superintendent Petco. Of course, we stand for each and every students in our board, and we affirm the identity of each and every student, regardless of their background and what they stand for. My question is, what measures HDSB is taking to proactively mitigate the potential liabilities, the risks in the event of a privacy or safety breach related to the gender identity and expression procedures, particularly when it comes to the concerns around washrooms, change rooms, because there have been incidents where grown-up men identifying as girls have accessed teenage girls' change rooms and washrooms. And they've been recorded on videos. These videos are widely circulated. They're available on YouTube. They've been sent to us also in direct emails. So what measures are we taking at the board to mitigate the potential liability issues?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Ahmed. Certainly, to the best of my knowledge, at the HDSB, we have not experienced any of the situations that you have described. And certainly, some things that we have in place include the fact that all our schools, and Superintendent Godet can certainly confirm for me, we have supported all gender washrooms in our schools and in our spaces, where our students have single-use washrooms. So the idea that a young person who identifies in a different way from their sex at birth will be in a washroom with others is not necessarily true, because we do have single-use all-gender washrooms where, depending on how you identify, you can access those washrooms. So that's something that I know exists in almost all of our schools. And so I hope that addresses your question in terms of risk.
Yes, thank you so much, Director Ennis. And I have a follow-up question. So how does HDSB navigate situations where there may be conflict between protected grounds under the Ontario, OHRC, particularly when addressing the issues of competing rights under the same act?
Issues of competing rights. I'm going to ask our Human Rights and Equity Advisor, Pardeep Nagra, to respond to this question.
Sure. Thank you, Director Ennis, and through you, Chair Collard, to Trustee Ahmed. The Ontario Human Rights Code understands the concept of competing rights. That's a reality. And so how it goes about it and how it speaks to what you call substantive rights, peripheral rights, are pieces and layers that get engaged to look at how. And I think one of the examples that we know about when we look at things around health and safety, for example, peanut allergies, looking at that and other competing rights for individuals, you can see that what is that first right that is looking to be protected. And based on that right looking to be protected, what are some of the other implications that may arise around what you call the peripheral rights? And so the Ontario Human Rights Code outlines processes of how you engage in looking at the concept of competing rights. And so that's something we're always aware of. We're always engaging, and we are guided by the Ontario Human Rights Code when it comes to competing rights.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do I still have time available?
Yes, you still have about 45 seconds.
Okay, so one question. I know Superintendent Petco touched upon this, but I would like to ask what specific steps are being taken to ensure that the gender identity and expression procedure prioritizes the safety and well-being of all the students, including addressing the concerns raised by parents regarding the safety and and security of their children.
So thank you, Trustee Ahmed, for the question. If I may begin, certainly as a board, we do not believe that the gender identity and expression in school AP, which is established to bring about inclusion and to support members of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, infringes on the rights of other students. We believe that the tent is big enough for all of us to exist. We believe that there is space within the school for all identities to coexist. We are seeking to find a way to support those who have been most marginalized. We have heard from students through our student voice report, through our census data, that members of the 2S LGBTQ plus are adversely impacted and affected in our schools. And so we are seeking to address a concern that we have heard about how we as a board need to do more to ensure a sense of belonging, a sense of safety, and a sense of purpose for our 2S LGBTQ plus students who we know are, they are vulnerable and they have faced hate, discrimination, and a lot of homophobia in our schools. And so we're seeking to provide a big enough tent that provides the support for them within that tent that supports all students of all identities. That's all we're seeking to do.
Yep, I totally agree with you, Director Ennis, and we are doing a tremendous job. Gender-neutral washrooms are a welcome addition and provide a very valid choice when they are in addition to our already existing lineup of separate girls' washrooms and separate boys' washrooms. Because we cannot take choices away and give only one choice to choose from. Choices means we are giving multiple choices, and whoever wants to choose one, they can choose one.
No, thank you. Thank you for that, Trustee.
Please, no, I will clear the gallery if there's more noise.
Thank you, Trustee Ahmed. To be clear, all our schools have boys' washroom, girls' washroom, all gender washrooms. There are choices. We are creating choices so that students can have a sense of comfort, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose within school that does not, put them at the margin, disenfranchise them, and make them feel like they're being othered, and bring shame and blame to them. So we do have those choices that you speak of, Trustee Ahmed. They exist in every single one of our schools.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And choices empower people. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving on to our next AP is building
Excuse me.
access.
I'd like to make a motion to extend this debate, please. I just think that there are questions that need to be asked. So I'm wondering if somebody would like to second that motion.
We don't second motions in committee. Is there any discussion regarding the motion to extend debate on this item?
Is there a time frame for its extension?
I know that Trustee Zhang had one more question and I had one more question. So 10 minutes? 10 minutes? 10 minutes? 10 minutes.
Okay, then by a show of hands, everyone who is in favor of extending debate by 10 minutes.
In favor, please.
Thank you. And
In
opposed? Thank you. That motion passes with dissent from Robbie. So we have time for 10 minutes. I know that there were two speakers. Is there anyone else? If there's someone else, put your name on there now. Okay. So I will go to Margot, then Shinyi, and then Tanya.
I also raised my hand, Chair.
Okay.
Point of order, Joanna's hand is up as well, and she is a first-time speaker.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I'm going to have to go to Joanna first. And the clock starts now.
Okay, good evening. Yeah, thank you very much for this discussion. Thanks, Margot, for bringing forward the questions that we have all received, and thank you, Superintendent Petco, for addressing them. I certainly hope that your answers will help to alleviate some of the uncertainty or anxiety, and certainly dispel some of the misinformation that is shared in the community. Director Ennis, you did answer my question in that, I was wondering what happens in our schools, right? And what you said is that, in fact, vast majority of students who are somewhere along their gender identity expression, shall we say, exploration or change, that they do come forward. That actually, it's the family that comes forward and works with the staff. And so my takeaway from this is that this admin procedure is really created for the sake of these students in question. It's not for the general public. It is for these students. It's not some abstract document. It's a procedure that sets out a framework for how staff are to fulfill their obligations with respect to students who are, on a gender identity a change or pathway, and it's to support them in accordance with the Ontario Human Rights Code. So that's my takeaway, and I think that really helps to frame this discussion and the questions, because it does away with, it's not for the general public. It doesn't pertain to me. It doesn't pertain to many of the families, but it certainly is a very relevant and important procedure for students who are whose gender expression is different from their from their biological sex at birth, and for their families. And so it's important that that is recognized, and that staff are well aware of it and adhere to it. So thank you.
I will remind the gallery to remain quiet, please. Thank you. Margot.
Thank you. So my question kind of was alluded to when Carol was speaking. So again, for Jenny, what I'm wondering, again, can you speak to the approach that's taken when it is the student that comes forward that is maybe fearful or is worried about what's going to happen, like hasn't told their parents? Those are the people, that's what we're concerned about, right? So when we have a student who comes who hasn't been able to tell the parents, what is the approach the school board, takes?
Thank you, Trustee Shuttleworth. So I can't speak to all 119 schools and exactly what happens in every scenario, but generally speaking, I would presume, and let's discuss this in terms of not just gender identity and expression. There are other topics of sensitivity that children sometimes are afraid to discuss with adults at home. And that is not a criticism or judgment statement around parents. What I'm saying is there are definitely situations outside of gender identity expression when the child feels most comfortable divulging, sharing with a caring adult at school. And that person could be the teacher, it could be the administrator, it could be a social worker, it could be an educational assistant, it could be the office secretary, office assistant. And I say that's wonderful. It means that what we endeavor to do is ensure that every student from kindergarten through grade 12 has a caring adult in our spaces that they can trust and feel comfortable to go to for any concern around their own safety, around potential safety of others because of what they might be experiencing, right? And then they have that discussion. I don't know where it might go from there. It could go to a need for a referral to social work, to CAS, to caring and safe school or safe schools for whatever reason. It could also mean that in that situation, there may be instances where parents need to be contacted, right? And parents are part of the journey of our students' success. But there are some very rare instances where parents are not the first person that our school personnel will contact. And that is because as educators at every level and every employee group in Halton District School Board, we have a duty working to ensure the safety, security, and well-being of every child that we serve. Trustee Shuttleworth, I hope that answers your question.
That does. Thank you very much, because I think that gets away from that idea of hidden, because I don't think it's hiding. I think it's the idea of trying to broker that relationship if it's possible. Thank you.
Shin-Yi, did you have another question?
Oh, thank you. So I need to make it quick, because I have 8 questions. So this is question 4, and in the section 2B3, so there's examples of a list of pronouns. So when we can address the students using those pronouns, but if we put those pronouns in the teaching practice, then the teacher may teach they is. So we have a lot of students from a non-English speaking background. So when they learn English in that way, do we consider this as any benefit for students to respect their cultural difference, and what is the benefit for their language development at an early age? So my question 5, this is in section 3 in the AP. So it has required all the teachers to, when they prepare the instructional materials, must have a range of gender identity expression and attraction. That means these item has nothing to do with the discrimination prevention. It's just the teachers take the initiative to teach those ideologies in the classroom. So do we support political movement advocacy in this classroom? So this is a question. So my question
Shin-Yi,
6.
I'm going to let the director answer that.
So the first question I believe you're asking, Trustee Zhang, was about pronouns and the use of subject-verb agreement. I think that we all understand historically and grammatically subject-verb agreements. I think that was one of the basic tenets of grammar that we were taught. Many in this room understand that. He is, they are. And so we understand also that language is evolutionary, that language evolves, and as such, that evolving of language sometimes means that we have to adjust the way that we have traditionally understood the usage of a particular noun or verb in correspondence with a particular subject. And so that is an evolving process, right? Like language is an evolutionary process, just as human beings have been through scientific ages. And so I ask that there be some acceptance and understanding that while we may think of the grammatically incorrect usage of subject and verb agreement, that we also support those who seek to identify differently and embrace and support them in ways that makes them feel affirmed.
Okay, my question, I can skip question 6 because Trustee Ahmed already covered that. So this is about washroom. My question number 5. This is about the. My question number 7. This is about the change room. So the AP says provide an alternate change and a shower location as an option. So this should not be an option because we need to consult all the biological female students and athletes. Are they comfortable share the change room and the shower location with trans women? So we must protect everyone, make everyone welcome and feel safe. So this is my question 7. My question number 8. My question number 8 is about the athlete team. So our section 9.1 has a reference to OFSAA statement. So allowed the trans women to join the female sports team. So I like the board to be aware of there's a regulation released last year, released by the World Athletics. This is the international governing body to manage the world records and certify the competition facility. And they already said this is the transgender participate is banned. Thank you.
Thank you, Shin-Yi. We have 1 minute left, Tanya.
I do have a series of questions, but I think in light of everything that's been said tonight, I'm not going to ask any more. but I'd like to read a letter that I received from parents in the community. So if you'll indulge me, and I'm going to shorten it. It reads, "We are the parents of a bright, articulate, kind, caring, and fun-loving 10-year-old HDSB student. Our child is also gender non-conforming. We welcome the clarifications and protections that this procedure offers to all HDSB students. There is a lot of fear-mongering surrounding accessibility and inclusivity for trans or gender-diverse students. As far as we've been able to tell, there is no evidence or data to support any claims of harm related to these policies. To the contrary, we know 2S LGBTQIA+ youth face high rates of gender-based violence, hate, and harassment. This procedure not only seeks to protect these vulnerable HDSB students, but allows them to thrive by participating in school activities and programs safely and comfortably, the same way their peers do. This procedure is not an abstract policy document for us. It means our child can attend a class trip to the ROM without fear there won't be a gender-neutral washroom for them to use. It means our child will be able to run cross-country with all their friends or try out for different sports teams without fear they will be turned away or forced to participate with other students they don't look like or identify with. Please accept our sincere gratitude for recognizing the rights of all HDSB students and putting in place procedures to protect them."
Thank you very much, Tanya. That was a lovely letter. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for reading that, Trustee Rocha, because I think it captures the sentiments of many of the students and families that we serve whom we don't often hear from. And I ask everyone, those in the gallery and those at home, those who are watching, that our aim and our goal really is to create a kind, inclusive, supportive environment for all. And I know that you wouldn't disagree with that. I know that you wouldn't disagree with that. That we want to create a kind, supportive, loving, caring environment for all. 2S LGBTQ+ students, all other identities of students, not one over the other, but all together. I know that's the kind of school that you want to see and that we want to see. And so I ask you, as you go out into the community, as you go back to your communities, that you take a stance in a position of kind, caring, loving, and supportive for all. I thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4.1.2, building access. Superintendent Gaudette.
Thanks. Good evening. The updates to this are very minor, administrative, and with dates and titles, and just some clarifications. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
I have reset the speakers list if anyone wanted to chime in. And I'm seeing no questions, so we can move on to 4.1.3, community funding of facility enhancements.
Thank you. I'll speak to this one as well. Again, formatting updates and some titles and dates. We did try to break out the fact that fundraising is slightly different than access to a community partner, which often comes with larger projects with maintenance obligations, and as such tried to break that out for some clarity, also reflecting our multi-year plan and trying to reflect the changes to the board bylaw around approval required at $50,000. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Gaudette. Seeing no questions, we move on to 4.1.4, investment of board funds, and Superintendent Ngoy.
Thank you. And there's no changes to this AP other than a cross-reference to the board banking resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And moving on once again, distribution of materials, 4.1.5, and I will go to Director Ennis for this one.
Thank you so much, Chair Collard. This AP reflects really a restructuring, reorganization, just to give some prominence to some of the information. We have also provided some clarity in terms of our eco schools and to be consistent with us as a board and our environmental leadership so that this procedure, is also in alignment with that. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Carol.
Thank you. Through Chair Collard to the director. I just want to confirm what's in green in our marked up version is new, correct? Like there's a new chunk about not endorsing the materials that are distributed. Is that correct? Sorry.
I'm not looking at a colored copy, but
so there's a whole chunk that appears to be new that says that the HDSB does not endorse any organization or its materials.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. That's the basis of my question, so I want to confirm it before I ask.
Yes.
So I have some concern about that. I think, the impact of a school or the board distributing materials will look like an endorsement to the parents who are receiving those materials. Let's assume it's coming home in a backpack. So I have some concerns about that policy that the board will distribute materials and then say we don't endorse it. Unless every piece of material that goes home has a sticker or something on it that says, here you go, we don't endorse that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just concerned about the implications for the board, as a trustee in my fiduciary duty of whether that's a wise policy. Mm-hmm. Additionally, materials that are to be distributed only at a particular school, the approval is then done by the principal, and it seems quite the onus to put on an individual principal to evaluate, let's say, an organization that's not well known. So I'm thinking, there are huge charity organizations in Canada that everyone knows, and I have no concern about that. And I also wouldn't be concerned about the board endorsing those organizations by sending home materials. But this seems a little bit vague, and I'm wondering if it's not opening up the board to potential liability, if it's better that we just don't distribute materials unless we actually do check, confirm, and endorse.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Baxter. Certainly understand the concerns. It has been a long-standing tradition and practice to support community organizations to distribute materials. Certainly, we have reserved the right, and that's one of the things we added, that we reserve the right not to send anything. You don't. This is not an automatic lever that you can pull, and that we, as a board, even if we have distributed it, that we can cease distribution even for something we have done previously because we no longer support that particular organization or maybe perhaps what's in the material. But I do hear your concerns, and something that we can reflect on in terms of our vetting processes for what materials are being sent out by the school. So that's something we'll take under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Amy, to Curtis again. So coming back, it's very similar to what Carol was speaking of. And I worry about that idea of not endorsing, particularly for the charities that we send information home for. So when there are charities that are getting involved with the schools and they are advertising through the schools and we send home stuff, I've seen that happen. So that is, as Carol said, that's endorsement. So I think those are good, and I think those are positive endorsements to support our community, to support the good work that's seen within our schools. So I'm just sort of highlighting the point that I think that needs to be clarified. Thank you.
And final question from Tanya.
I think I'm on the same wavelength because I'm thinking of one charitable organization in particular where we are the direct our students are the direct beneficiaries of their charitable work. So to not endorse them doesn't make any sense. So I'm having a hard time with that section that we don't endorse any organization.
And thank you for that. I think that, part of the thinking, of course, is, there are organizations that are clear that all of us would endorse any day of the week, every day of the year. And then there are perhaps questionable materials that may come our way. And those are the ones that we're saying, well, maybe we're not sending these ones out. So to Trustee Baxter's point, maybe we shouldn't send anything out. But then there are those who we really support and want to send out. So it requires more reflection, I would say.
Thank you. That's the final speaker on that AP. We move on to 4.1.6, addressing public concerns. And again, I go to you, Curtis.
Thank you very much for that, Chair Collard. The AP addressing public concerns, of course, in addition to the name revision, just so that we have, it was a question I think that Superintendent Petco actually went through this procedure in one of her answers earlier. And so many of the things that are written there are for you to reflect on. The one piece that I would highlight is the part that says that if a superintendent is unable to satisfactorily resolve the matter, concerns may be addressed to the associate director and then to the director of education, who will then consult with the director of education on the matter. I think Superintendent Petco also referenced that as well. So this I think is been pretty standard and clear. We just sought to clean it up to make it a little bit, to bring more clarity to it.
Thank you very much. And Margot.
Thank you to Curtis. And this is coming from, I saw Robbie's comments in the Q&A, and it raised something with me too. So I know in there is, and I know we're trying to make a distinction between operations and governance. However, and I always remember when I first became a trustee, having a conversation with Leah Reynolds and her telling me that she would always tell parents, if they called her, she was there to help navigate. So I don't know if there is any room in there to have that idea that although the trustee cannot be the solver of the problem, because we don't deal with operations, we are there to help members of the public navigate the connections or the people that they're supposed to speak to. Because again, I think sometimes I get phone calls all the time and I always direct them to my superintendents that I have, or the principal, or the teacher of the school. But sometimes they just don't know what to do. And I think that sometimes for them, that safety blanket of having that trustee just to reaffirm, but again, reminding them that they have no authority in operational issues.
Thank you. I understand and appreciate the point, Trustee Shuttleworth. I do think that it muddies the waters a bit in terms of the operations and governance. If we put the trustees in as a part of an operational, protocol and response. And so that's just my reflection on that. But I do understand your concern, and they are valid and they are correct.
Yeah, I just think, for me, I just know that I think people sometimes find comfort having that there. So just a point of, I don't know, personal information. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers on the list, we go on to 4.2, long-term accommodation plan update, and I would like to welcome Fred Thibault to the desk.
Evening, trustees. Just got to put in my 16-character password. 1 second. Which you made me change today after I finally got used to it. I mean, my second. Anyways. Through Madam Chair, this report we're just providing trustees with a little bit of our what we're proposing to be our work plan for the 2023 LTAP update. We're kind of changing we're looking for some feedback tonight to change our approach to kind of go in line with what we had previously indicated to the board that we're looking to do as further enhancement to the LTAP, which we did quite a big refresh over the last couple of years. And what we're looking to do is to take the resources that are usually used to update the LTAP by updating the formatting, the data, et cetera, and instead take that focus and look to other strategies on how we could better engage with their communities. Albeit that I think we made some significant strides in terms of the accessibility, usability, and approachability to the document. It still remains a 400-plus page brick. whether it's online or next to your desk, like I carry mine around. I still think there's some work to be done there in terms of how we can make it easier to access by not only our wider community or students, but also maybe internally with our admin. So what we suggest to do this year is take some of the newer technology that's available to us through some of our online modules, namely through our GIS or geographic information systems, and trying to start creating this document more online. So a lot of the information that we've started to bring forward, like key performance indicators, projects that are happening in the community, enrollment projections, and so forth, that can all be available online so that the LTAP in itself, the physical form that we know it today, will maybe migrate more towards a smaller, tighter document that looks at more of a board summary, and anything that delves deeper into the specifics of data on a elementary review area or secondary review area basis, that can be found online. So then updating the document will take a lot less time. We'll be able to have that more live. And when we're consulting with the community, it's going to be a lot easier to direct them in terms of getting to the information that they need, as opposed to trying to direct them within the larger document. So that's the vision. So the results of that, because again, this would be a time-intensive piece, would be that we wouldn't get an updated LTAP this year. But the idea would be for next year when we do the updates, we'll have a more accessible digital format that's maybe more successful. And if time permits, we'd also like to have a little bit more of a larger engagement piece than we have in the last few years. So that's the vision, and happy to take any feedback or suggestions from trustees, or if there's any concerns that may need to be addressed, I'm all ears.
And seeing no questions, I think everyone is pretty happy with what they read. There's a question where?
Oh, now there is. Robbie.
Did you want to speak first, Carol? No. Okay. So first off, feedback. I support the approach. I think it will be extraordinarily important, the interface that is the landing page for the pathfinding of you arrive at your planning, and the ease with which you can find your local area and what's relevant to your area and the definition of that area will be extraordinarily important. Secondly, I think the existing physical document will not lose all value, and particularly those municipal project summaries. In fact, cutting that down and giving a lot more focus to those summaries will make it a lot easier to navigate the remaining document and say, okay, this is what's on tap for the next 2 years, 4 years, 8+ years, whatever the case may be. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's glad to see that there may be some more highlight to those summaries.
Thank you. And Carol.
Yeah, I guess I would just agree with what Robbie said. I love dashboards and KPIs, and you're doing more of that, so that's always good. The current documents are PDFs, correct? So those are not accessible fully? I don't think they meet.
In terms of through Madam Chair, in terms of accessibility, I would say that they're accessible in that you can access the whole document, but accessibility in terms of ease of use, I would say more so where, even with our municipal breakouts that we had for each municipality, it's still a very large document, so navigating your way through that might be difficult, so you're almost having to know what the wayfinding is to get there. So I think if, to Trustee Bryden's point, if there's an easier way online that you could say, okay, well, here was the general summary, now I know what ERA I am, or there's an interface that's there where it's put in your address and I'll tell you what ERA, at least that way, then it's like, okay, plug it in and what you see in the document will now instead be on your screen. I think that'll just make it easier to get to the information that you need and not be as daunting as I think it is right now.
Yeah, I guess just as a follow-up, so you already made a huge improvement by breaking the sections out, so I can look at Oakville. I meant sort of AODA accessibility as well. I think we're sort of trying to move in that direction. And so that might solve some of those problems with the documents. A website in which, or a page, sorry, in which a parent could just put in the name of their school might be a really great sort of start for the search of information, and certainly a great tool for trustees to be able to provide to school communities to say, here you go, start with this. And then, you know, for those of us who like to read all of what you've put there, then we can certainly do that. But yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think it'll be very well received. And it's just a continuum of improvements that you've already been making. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And seeing no other speakers on this, thank you very much, Fred, for your presentation, and have a good evening. The next item is 4.3, PD Schedule Tracker, brought to you by Vice Chair Oliver and Manager Khan.
Thank you. So as well, I want to thank Manager Khan, first of all, for creating this wonderful tool and addressing this need. As you all know, given that in addition to the trustee PD committee, there are a number of other standing committees and ad hoc committees, some of which put forth recommendations for trustee professional development through the course of their own work and exploration that they do. It's important to track all of these PD activities to avoid duplication and any miscommunications. Also, this tool will provide us with a long-term, long-range view of what's coming up so that trustees can plan their schedules appropriately. So we will begin to use this tool, and as new PD activities are planned, they will be entered into that tool. We'll be able to see what's coming up next and see if there's, opportunities for anything new. So thank you, Manager Khan, and I hope that answers anybody's questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Oh.
Tanya.
I pressed my mic to go on the speakers list. So I appreciate the creation of the PD tracker. My one question is, because I do refer to my calendar on a daily basis, as soon as PD is planned, can we get an invitation sent out with the proposed agenda immediately so that we can plan accordingly? So that's my only request, to get an invitation sent out so that it's in our calendars. Thanks.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we will move on to 4.4, terms of reference for chair and vice chair. Vice Chair Oliver and I worked on this over the last month, and it has lots of references to the Education Act as well as our bylaws, code of conduct, etc., and hopefully is comprehensive enough. It will be coming back for us to append to our bylaws. So there will be another opportunity to speak about this if there are any questions that come up in the next week or so. Because I'm not seeing any questions right now, so I'm thinking perhaps Robbie.
Thank you. Being relatively new to the board, I actually looked at this and went, I don't know if that's the right set of duties. So I would strongly love the opinions of those of you around this table who have served at the chair's role, of whether you think this is whether there's anything on here that shouldn't be on there, whether there's anything missing that needs to be on there, and just to have some diversity of opinion and hear where others are at. And if you just think great, say great.
Does anyone want to chime in? Go ahead, Margot.
Yeah, so I think it's a good list. The only thing is when I look at it, I don't know that it gives justice to the vice chair. That's for me, I think the vice chair it just feels like, I look at this, I think, yeah, I know when it just seems more. So I don't know that for Joanna, it recognizes all of the things that I know the vice chair does. So I don't know if that maybe you can look at how to expand on the role of the vice chair. By and large, I think that the stuff in the chair is good. Mm-hmm. But again, I just think that for me, and I'll ask Tanya as well, I just think that when I look at that, I sort of thought, oh, I know Joanna probably does a lot more than that.
Through your chair, if I can respond.
Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly, Margot and Tanya, I welcome your input in how we can better capture all the duties of the vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, this doesn't come for another couple of weeks. So any conversations that you want to have in the next little while, we can beef that up for sure.
So yeah, I'm happy to do that. I don't know that I've had an opportunity to do that yet. So I'm happy to talk with you when we can.
Thank you very much. And Tanya.
Yeah, I sure did a lot. I just can't remember. So I wish I had actually written down everything I did to make sure it was captured here. I do have a question because I do see under the board chair that there are check-ins with the director weekly. So I'm wondering, does it need to be weekly? Why is it weekly? Because that seems like a lot of time, and I'm sure the director's busy with other stuff like running a school board. I just question the frequency of it.
I'm going to ask Director Ennis to respond to that.
Thank you so much for the question, Trustee Rocha. Certainly, communication is one of our foundational elements and something that I think we need to establish more. I think if we are all would agree that communication, we need more, not less. And certainly weekly is a rhythm and a cycle that I find to be acceptable. It's something that certainly started last year with Chair Shuttleworth, and something that I've continued with Chair Collard. And I think it works. It gives a good rhythm, gives a good timing, so that we don't get too far away from each other in terms of just the day-to-day, week-to-week things that are happening in the board. And it's a good touch-based relationship building, communication, and it's something that I actually support.
I'd like to add on to that it's not always, we plan to have it on Fridays, but sometimes we are at the same place and we have a few minutes to chat, and it turns into we're waiting for something to start and we're chatting and we say, okay, have we had our weekly meeting? Yes, we have. And so, it's not always every Friday that it happens. It's just a touching base and making sure that, we each know what's going on in each other's bailiwick, so that nothing is overly surprising when it comes to the next week. And seeing no other speakers to this, I'm going to move to, Tanya.
Looks like I'm still an active speaker. So for clarification, I know you're chairing, and normally it would have been Joanna chairing because this is a committee of the whole. So I know that in the absence of the vice chair physically in the room, it goes to the chair. But then who's vice chairing tonight? Or is there a role of vice chair during committee of the whole?
Well, there's nothing precluding a vice chair from not being physically in the room, and the vice chair is here. So the vice chair for this meeting is Joanna.
Did not know that.
Moving on to 5.1, standing committees, an update from Joanna for the Board Self-Assessment Committee.
Okay. So the Board Self-Assessment Committee finished its review of the 2023 trustee survey. We had to do that in two sections because there was a lot of content there, and we wanted to do it justice and assess, which areas were of concern and were identified by us as requiring maybe further professional development or discussion. And so those areas that were identified as such, and where we could kind of decide, if there was a home for that particular issue with another standing committee, I've created kind of a new process where I've taken that information, compiled it into a document, and pushed that document out to the standing committee chair for them to bring that to their committee at their upcoming meeting and give that some consideration with, how does it fit within the terms of reference, the scope of that committee. For example, there was a couple of issues that we identified as being relevant to the trustee PD committee. So that was shared with the chair, and that's Carol. There were a couple of items identified for the multi-year plan foundational elements ad hoc committee. And there were there was one issue for the government's doc review committee. So I hope all of you who are chairs of those committees have received that information and are considering it for discussion with your group. There were also a few issues that members identified as requiring perhaps a facilitated discussion at a committee of the whole. So that we will work through at our next meeting, and we'll put that on the agenda for a committee of the whole once we are ready. And finally, we'll be looking at the tool that was used in 2023, along with some other tools that are recommended either by OPSPA or through some other similar organizations. So we'll look at what we have and what's out there, and we'll endeavor to create a comprehensive tool that is valid, reliable, and feasible, and something that we can use in a standard manner going forward and recommend to future trustees to use as they embark on their terms.
Thank you very much. I see one question from Tanya.
So how soon will we see the tool by which we will be assessing ourselves? And I ask that because we're already 2 months in, and chances are we're going to have to assess how we did by November. So each month that goes by, we're plugging along, but not knowing how we're going to measure ourselves. So how quickly are we getting this tool?
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly as you pointed out, we're only 2 months into the work of this committee. We're doing a lot of assessment of where things sit with trustees at the moment and what their needs are, and we will be reviewing the tool itself and other tools within the next meeting or so. So that's before even mid-March, right? But the committee will have that work at least well underway. So I think we do have some time. I understand the time pressure for sure, but the committee will work to set out a timeline, and that's something we can run by everybody at the committee of the whole and get agreement on to make sure it makes sense and everybody's happy with, and go from there. Thank you.
Any follow-up question? No? Thank you very much. Moving on to Governance Document Review Standing Committee and Robbie.
Thank you. You'll see in the agenda proposed revision to both the trustee expenses and student trustee expenses GPs. Those will be coming forward at next board meeting for approval. Here the premise is simply to incorporate existing practice around student trustee expenses appropriately into our procedures. If there's any feedback on that, I'd be happy to hear it.
Tanya?
So many questions tonight. So I guess my question is, has someone from the expense paying department reviewed the procedure to ensure that everything on there is accurate, both from a trustee perspective and a student trustee perspective.
Thank you. We ran several questions by Roxana, but I'm not actually certain if she has reviewed this policy as exists. Not yet.
The trustee expenses, yes. The student trustee, I'm just looking at it.
Well, we will ask for that feedback before it comes to board.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, too, that the student trustees have also been part of the process. They received a copy of both of the documents well in advance of it coming to Committee of the Whole, and we've had no comments from them. Moving on to 5.1.3, Professional Development Committee, and Carol.
Yes, so just a brief update for this evening. The committee has met and discussed some ideas for PD opportunities for this year. We currently have a PD booked for next week, and we also have another session at the end of March. So we're looking at April and beyond for planning at this point. So we have created a survey. I'm just waiting for confirmation from a couple of committee members that it looks good, and it will go out to everyone. So please take a look for that. I know you have another assignment that's due on Monday, so keeping in mind that we have other things going on that's taking up trustees' time. I will get the survey out, but there'll be plenty of time to complete it. So we'll be looking for ideas that may not be there, and also ranking of interest in some of the ideas that we've come up with. The plan from there is to compile the results of that survey, and we ask that all 11 of us complete it, please. And then we will bring a report to board with what it looks like we'll be planning. And of course, that will be done in conjunction with Director Ennis and staff to determine which sessions can be done internally and which will need external providers. So that this is the beginning of the discussion. But in summary, please keep an eye out for a survey coming to your mailboxes soon. Thank you.
We wait with bated breath. We have no ad hoc committee reports this evening, so we'll move on. We do? Okay. Here we go. Go ahead, Kelly.
Just thought I'd bring you up to date of where we are with the Fair Funding Committee. We're in the process of getting an infographic designed right now that would be going out to the community for an education piece and for advocacy. And we're also going to be developing a letter for community members to use potentially as a basis if they want to contact their MPP on our behalf or other relevant people. And we're also looking at, we've broken into 3 groupings. So there's the community, and then there's the NPPs. And so we're discussing what we would need, the information we will need to move forward to have a meeting with them. And thank you to trustees Gray and Daniele for already sort of breaking the ground and speaking to MPP Arnett, and who has volunteered to try and get his cohorts together for us. Also would be looking at sharing information with OSPA and other boards in our area, as well as OASBO and Code. So we've got a lot going on, and we're trying to tie it in with funding because we are actually advocating for the next funding cycle, but the biggest impact will be now with this funding cycle with the community sees what's going to happen with our deficit. So there's all kinds of pieces in play, and hopefully we'll be coming to one of the next Committee of the Wholes with the infographic for information and viewing and feedback and the other pieces. So thank you.
So, Kelly, I see you have a question from Shinyi.
Not a question, so I have a report from the PIC committee.
Okay, please go ahead. Oh, PIC. That's not an ad hoc committee. So you'll report on that at board.
Oh, I need to report it at board?
At board, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So trustee questions and comments. We have a couple of minutes for that. Would you like to say something now, Shinyi?
Just want to say we have the PIC has a conference and is already scheduled for April 20th. And the same location last year in Milton, LC McGill. So we invite the parents and the information will be sent to the parents. And we also invite the trustees if you have any prepare the workshop, and you can have contact us, any one of the PIC committee or Superintendent Tara Connor. That's it.
Thank you very much, Shinyi. And seeing no other speakers, Naveed.
Thank you, Chair. Trustee questions and comments, right? So,
sir.
I just thank you so much. So I have one comment about the gender identification AP. And this is going to be the last comment that I make. And I completely understand that many parents have concerns because some things are not clear. And I was reading the AP just now, and the point number 8 about the athletic participations. I felt that something needs to be clarified. I know the students will be allowed to participate in the teams or with the gender they feel most, they identify most, for sure, and I appreciate that, and I'm in line with that. The only thing is, there should be a limit for the students, like. For elementary students, it should be allowed, but past elementary, when the students start to hit the puberty and the muscle mass changes and the bone density changes, and the science tells us this, then we have to be careful. Even if the students are identifying with the opposite gender, then we have to be careful because there have been incidents when grown-up boys and grown-up men have started identifying as the opposite gender, and they took part in women's sports, especially in the contact sports, like OFSA has wrestling. So once the bodies develop and the bone density, puberty hits, bone density is there, the muscle mass develops. After that, there is our strengths are mainly because of our bone density and the muscle mass. We have to be careful that we are not risking anything here. So that's what my comment is. There may have been some instances where biological boys and biological men, when they start identifying as the opposite gender, they took part in these contact sports and they seriously harmed the people, especially the female athletes. So we have to be really a little bit careful. And of course, our board is a place where we accommodate everyone, and everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. There is no discrimination at our board. But at the same time, we have to be aware of these things. That's what my comment is.
Thank you very much for that comment, Naveed. I saw the director and us making notes. Are there any other trustee comments or questions? Okay, we will take a brief recess, and when we come back, we will go into private session. So if we could please have a motion to move into private. I'll go with Tanya on that one. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we are now in private session. Thank you very much.